Welcome to Breathe California TV. Each week we present a topic that's related to protecting your health. Most medical programs worry about treating disease, and principal focus of this show is to help you with things that prevent damage in your lungs or your health. Today we're going to be talking to climate expert Bob Levy. Bob, I'm honored to have him for a friend for 30 years, and he's going to discuss the connection between climate change, air pollution, and all sorts of wretched things that have been happening to our planet, and most importantly, what you can do about it. So we'll see you in 30 seconds.
It's given me a chance to go out and be with people who has the same problem, and it helps you to manage your life better too, because you hear different things from each person, and it's just been really helpful in many ways.
Welcome back. This is Breathe California. I'm Terry Trumbull, a volunteer. If you want to volunteer for Breathe California, we're in San Jose at 408-998-5865 in Willow Glen. Today, I'm honored to have my friend Bob Levy join us. Robert, welcome.
Well, thank you, Terry. And it's been a pleasure to be your friend for the last 30 years. Just as a side note here, about 30 years ago, Terry and I started the League of Conservation Voters in Santa Clara County, and we've both been actively involved in that ever since. So today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about climate change and what's happening here. You're probably all familiar with the COP26, the COP26 convention going on in Glasgow right now, where we have world leaders on climate change trying to figure out how to stop this runaway locomotive that we are calling the climate crisis. What's happening here is that we are heating up our planet a lot faster than we originally thought. And when Al Gore wrote the book on it 20 plus years ago, it's just been escalating at a logarithmic pace. And we're quite honestly in a lot of serious trouble. And we're hoping that something very positive comes out of the Glasgow COP26 conference that's going on right now. They're about 2/3 of the way through it. There's some good news coming out of there, but there's also a lot of bad news in that we have a heck of a long way to go.
So Bob, let me interrupt. I saw a press conference by Greta Thunberg, 18-year-old Swedish girl who's done some pretty miraculous things trying to get the world to solve the climate crisis. And she berated the 190 leaders for not doing enough while we were there. So,
well, there's a lot. Yeah, she was not positive at all, in the slightest, and for good reason. Just as a little known fact, there are more lobbyists there, more people representing the oil industries or the energy industry there than there are any number of delegates from any one country. So there's more people representing the energy industry than either representatives from China or the representatives from the United States or any single country. And they have a seat at the table. So there are a lot of headwinds, even in a conference whose whose specific purpose is to stop this runaway train. If you like, Terry, I can jump into the presentation.
Please do.
Okay. Let me know if you can see my screen.
So while you're getting that going, I just wanted to mention, I saw a YouTube video where the head under Obama of FEMA, the Emergency Management Agency, to handle things like the wildfires that you just threw on the screen, said when he was in office, sea level rise had already been 1 foot. So it's not an abstraction where we're guessing about it happening in the future, but we are actually experiencing that. And
We
perhaps
are, and
that's,
actually the infrastructure bill that just got passed, that was one of the big items in the infrastructure bill. There's, I don't know how many billions of dollars that were set aside for resilience and resistance, which in essence means shoring up our infrastructure to prevent or to dull the impacts of climate change. So it's actually a fair amount of the infrastructure bill is dedicated to preventing the impacts of climate change, not stopping the impacts. That's the reconciliation bill that's coming, hopefully. So
Bob,
here's this is in essence California last year.
Yep.
We had some problems, and we, as did a lot of the world, as you'll see in a minute. California was not alone in experiencing these fires. So for years and years and years, we've been saying, climate change is coming, climate change is coming, climate change is coming. I mean, Al Gore wrote the book on it. And instead of getting elected, we elected a Texas oilman. And so we got ourselves deeper into trouble. But now it's here. And, you know, people say, whoa, we didn't see this coming. Some people still don't believe it's true, which is really sad. But we had last year incredible destruction. The fires in Siberia, I don't know if you know this, but the fires in Siberia at the time were larger than all the rest of the fires in the planet combined.
Bob, let me interrupt you here. And some people will want to know, what in the heck do wildfires have to do with climate change?
Well, there's a number of things. First of all, it's a lot hotter, so things burn easier. And this is what happened in Siberia. It was dry and it was hot. They actually had 100-degree days in Siberia, which is unheard of. We see this here in our own climate. It's a lot drier than it has been over the last few years. And so there's a lot of really dry timber up in the hills. So it's a combination of being drier and hotter, and then you just need a spark and off it goes. We saw the fires in Australia, we saw the fires in Greece, we saw the fires in Siberia. There were fires all over the world last year, unprecedented fires. And simultaneously, we were seeing the oceans warm up. When the oceans warm up, you get things like Hurricane Ida. And so the last couple of hurricane seasons were the biggest ones on record. They ran out of letters last year and they had to go to the Greek letters. And they're pretty close this year. I think they have one letter left. So we're seeing a lot of extremely large Category 4, Category 5 hurricanes, and far more than we would normally see.
Bob, let me just interrupt you there, and feel free to comment on this. But although there's some slight increase in the frequency, for hurricanes, they're much bigger. A lot more, as you just mentioned, of 4 and 5s, which are the two biggest levels of hurricanes. And so it's pretty bad the way the earth is beating up on us for being so stupid. So what about the flooding?
Well, the flooding, here's a picture of Tennessee, but just a few months ago, Europe was hit with flooding like this. And so we're seeing, what happens is if the temperature rises, the atmosphere can hold a lot more water, which is one of the reasons for the hurricanes as well. But it also means flooding. We have a much larger rain events than we have because the atmosphere holds so much more water than it did before. And also we're seeing extremes in weather. So we're seeing the polar vortex sit over the Midwest, because what's happening is we're having less differentiation in temperatures between the southern and the northern latitudes. And so the jet streams aren't blowing as hard. And things like polar vortexes or heat domes or whatever sit in place for a long period of time, we've experienced that here in California over the last couple of years, which is one of the reasons we've been having droughts. We have a heat dome sit over us. The Gulf or the jet stream's a lot harder, is a lot weaker. It doesn't push it out. So we're seeing a feast and famine type thing. You're having temperature and extremes, weather extremes on both ends. And really, we saw that just last week or 2 weeks ago. We had a very strange weather event in California 2 weeks ago. And that was when we had the bomb cyclone sitting off the Pacific and what they call an atmospheric river. And I don't know how this name appeared the last few years, but the bomb cyclone combined with that atmospheric river caused a rain event that was unprecedented in California history. They got 12 inches in 24 hours on Mount Tam. Most of the Bay Area got 5 inches in 24 hours. It was really incredible. And this was in October, unheard of to see that kind of weather. So we're seeing weather extremes on both sides. We're seeing a drought, and then we see wild storms following it. It's going to be very unpredictable, but we know it's going to cause a mess. So I got a question for you. See if you can answer this one, Terry. If we reduce our carbon footprint to pre-industrial levels, will temperatures stop rising?
So Bob wants me to note that it is the level of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases. And even if we get our severe reduction quickly, it's going to take a while for the atmosphere to recover. Is that close to right, teacher?
Yes, that's Professor Levy to you. Yes, that's exactly right. We will not see temperatures stabilize if we stabilize the amount of carbon in the atmosphere, or if we stop increasing carbon. Because one of the reasons is CO2 stays in the atmosphere for 300 to 1,000 years. So just leaving the amount we have here is still going to trap the energy. Simultaneously, we've melted the ice, and it turns to nice dark blue water. It's like wearing a black T-shirt on a hot day. It just sucks up the heat. Plants absorb less carbon dioxide when the weather is warm. Soil produces more CO2. The permafrost is melting, and was resulting in methane. And methane is 70 times more potent than carbon dioxide at greenhouse gases. Fortunately, it doesn't stay in the atmosphere as long. The forests are burning, reducing CO2, and the waters are warming, which hold more CO2. So if we just cut down to almost zero now, the temperature is still going to go up a degree or 2 Celsius. So, which means right now, in 10 years, we could be 1.5 degrees warmer than we are now. And we're already 1.1 degrees Celsius warmer than we are at pre-industrial levels. So the COP26 and the International Energy Association are all saying, let's try to stop at 1.5. After we get to 1.5 degrees Celsius above that, we're in deep doo-doo. Personally, I don't see how we're going to stop before 2 or 2.5. We're in a lot more trouble than actually you're hearing in the news. They're talking about 1.5 based on the carbon that's already in the atmosphere and the current trends. 1.5 is a pipe dream. I mean, I know I'm hearing that's what they're talking about at the Paris Accords and Glasgow, but I personally don't believe it. I think we're in a lot more trouble than that.
So, Bob, one of the indications is all the lobbyists that you mentioned showed up for this international conference that 190 leaders came to. Newspaper had an amusing article on 1,200 private jets flew into, was it Stockholm where the meeting was? None of them were plane pooling together. Each bigwig had to have their own plane and an entourage flying in with them.
I saw a political comment to that regard that was pretty funny. But yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, jet travel is incredibly polluting from a greenhouse gas perspective. So of course you can see the It's going to be devastating consequences. And here's a picture of the fire that was going on in Australia last year, which burned a massive amount of that island. Well, it's not an island, continent. So,
which your point earlier was this is a worldwide problem. It isn't just California or the Pacific coast that's burning. You've already mentioned Siberia and Australia.
Yeah, so and Greece, they had these big fires in Southern Europe this year. There's been fires everywhere. They had actually an 100-degree day at the North Pole last year. It's pretty amazing. And what's happening on the difference between what's happening in the lower latitudes and the upper latitudes is really amazing. But here's some of the consequences of a 2-degree rise. We're going to see sea level rise.
I apologize. I'm going to interrupt you. We're going to come back. I hope our audience looks at this chart of problems. We're in the middle of the show. So we'll come back in 30 seconds after another public service announcement.
Okay.
And Bob Levy will tell us more about the problems of climate change and what we can do about it.
My name is Rene Montez. I've been using the CPAP machine, I would guess 10 years. I got so accustomed to it, I don't go anywhere without it. I take it with me everywhere. From the moment I put it on, I thought it was the greatest thing because the breathing was a lot easier, and after using it for a couple nights, I felt a lot of energy. Breathe California is fabulous.
Welcome back. This is Breathe California's Environmental Concerns show. Our guest today is climate expert Bob Levy. You've got a chart on screen about what happens from a 2-degree rise in temperature. So tell us about it.
Okay, I will here. And I'll try to go through this fairly quickly so we can get to what we can do about it. But there's a lot of negative impacts that are resulting from it. We've talked about the extreme weather, sea level rise, of course, as the ice melts and the glaciers melt. Species extinction and migration. A little known fact is probably not a little known facts, is that we are in the 6th great extinction right now. It's the first one that's been caused by humanity. And we are wiping out the plants and animals on this planet at a staggering rate. Just one small piece of information or fact that sort of puts this into perspective. And this is one fact that scares the heck out of me. And that is, and maybe I should ask you the question, Terry, what percentage of the species, sort of by weight, let's say by weight, what percentage of the insects in the world have disappeared in the last 40 years? Just a single grain of sand in the hourglass of time. But
well, this is pure guesswork.
No,
I know
okay.
that are over 1 million insect species we haven't even discovered. And I would guess half of them will be gone before we even know they were ever on this earth. So what's the right number?
They're saying between 70 and 80% of the insects in the world have died in 40 years. The bottom line of the food chain, the bottom line of life, and we've wiped out 70 to 8% in 40 years. And that's, within our lifetimes, that's a grain of sand in the hourglass. It's really a scary statistic if you think about it. We talked about fires and droughts and hurricanes. You're going to have crop failures because plants won't be able to grow in like the Central Valley is going to get really hot. Ocean acidification, which is extremely scary, because what that means is that the calcium carbonate in the ocean dissolves at a certain pH level. And if calcium carbonate dissolves, that means shells dissolve, coral dissolves, seashells dissolve. And if the shell on the krills dissolve, the whole food chain of the ocean collapses. And that's a reality, that's a possible reality.
So how in the world could the ocean turn into acid?
Well, two is one, it's getting warmer, but the other one is that the ocean absorbs the carbon dioxide and it becomes carbonic acid.
So CO2 and water are an acid.
CO2 in water is an acid. For example, my bubbly water here is filled with carbonic acid, which I love, but it's not the best thing for my teeth. So there's your health, definitely your health things for today. Mass migration, because we're already seeing that. If you're paying attention to what's actually happening in the Middle East right now, they're having a serious drought and they're having serious heat waves, and it's causing a mess in Iraq and Syria. Really, it's disastrous what's going on in Iraq and Syria from a climate perspective. And what's going to come out of all these mass migrations, people fighting over water, drought, croplands, it's going to be war. And when we all know what war does to our planet and to humanity, if nothing else scares you, the possibility of serious wars should. Okay. This is one of my favorites.
Just to go over that, don't mean to screw up your presentation, but one of the things that I've seen an article on is Turkey proposing enormous dams on the Tigris and Euphrates. And Iraq is already a desert, completely dependent on the water from those two rivers. And Iraq has been talking about heading into Turkey.
Yeah, they're already talking war. They're already talking war in the Middle East because of climate. In the United States, we're seeing mass migrations out of Central America because of climate issues. China is trying to monopolize on all the water in the Himalayas right now. There's a lot of really scary stuff going on as a result of humanity wanting to get their share of the pie before it's gone.
Or more than their share of the pie.
Or more, and then there's the migration issues that are going to go with it. So this is one of my favorite quotes from a guy I would have loved to see him get elected as president. This is the governor of Washington, Jay Inslee. We're the first generation to feel the impact of climate change and the last generation that can do something about it. And I think everybody should take that to heart. It's really all our jobs right now because we're in serious trouble. So
we've got to appreciate the Greta Thunbergs of the world because we're talking about their futures. I may survive the problems of climate change with only 30 years left, but my two kids have each got about 70. So
that's right. Same with my three. Is that they're going to see it, and our grandchildren, Terry, they're going to be devastating. But I thought this was a funny picture. It says, your temperature is still rising, but don't worry, that's just a way for your body to kill off the infection.
with us being the infection.
With us being the infection, exactly. So what can we do? I actually wrote this for an interfaith group. So originally, part of this presentation, it's been adapted for this presentation. But what can we do? What can you do, in your work, your congregation, the clubs you belong to, and then what can you do as a member of the community at large? Right? What can you do are some of the basics things here, and these all help in a little way, because they say that our personal habits still account for potentially 5% of the overall climate change. Not including
so the first one you got
transportation.
Is eat less meat. And the last time I tried to get a meal with you, you said no beef or pork. What's that all about?
Well,
how are cows and pigs creating a climate change problem?
Well, I have different issues with the two, quite honestly. But cattle produce about 10 times as much greenhouse gases as a non-meat dish. Chicken's not so bad. Chicken has 2 times or something of that nature. But red meat, particularly cattle, has an incredible amount of carbon footprint, and it's from not only from the land they use and the processing and all the grain that's grown for them, but they also have a digestive system that produces a lot of methane. Pork I don't like eating because those animals are so smart they know what's going on, and it's just not the right thing to do. You just shouldn't be killing animals that are as smart as pigs and treating them as, in that kind of condition. So I just think I think it's immoral to eat pork. But there's a lot of different things you can do, and that's eat less meat, buy local, buy sustainable, bring your own bags. There's all sorts of things. But the bottom line is you really need to be conscientious. Whenever you make a decision, think that the earth is in balance, because it is, quite honestly. If in your community, you can be informed, understand what's going on, read, go to public workshops, vote, and do what I'm doing right now and be a mouthpiece. Share your knowledge, and let other people know what's going on. I mean, my friends probably got sick of me telling them that, hey, we shouldn't be doing that. Don't use plastic bags. Like when I went to lunch with Terry a couple of weeks ago and said, no, Terry, we're not eating meat. So
you already mentioned an example. You and I, with the League of Conservation Voters, worked very hard to get local officials elected who realize there's a problem here and trying to get us to live sustainably.
That's right. And one thing you do is have a seat at the table. Terry and I both do that as well. Terry was a past planning commissioner. I'm a current planning commissioner. We've been on numerous committees, commissions, etc., within the community. And so that's something you can do. You can go in there and you can get to know your local elected officials. You can volunteer to be on these committees and have a seat at the table. If you have a seat at the table, you have a voice. And so I think it's really appropriate to have a voice at the table.
Good point, Bob. Sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to remind you, we have 1 minute left. So
okay, well, I'm going to go right to the last slide then. And that is something called donut economics. There's a sweet spot where we should be living, and that is between our environmental constraints and our social constraints. Everything whenever you do something, you should look at it from a perspective. This is Professor Levy again. That there's a sweet spot in the middle of life where things are sustainable. From a society perspective, we need justice, we need jobs, we need education, we need economy. We have an environmental boundary that we've been talking about that we really can't cross. It's not sustainable, and we have to have economic growth. So when you look at the world, look at it from that perspective of the donut. We have to stay in the center area. If we don't, we're gonna kill ourselves from an environmental perspective if we go outside of it, and if we don't take care of our own society, society has problems. You have the whole social justice issues and equity. So as a bottom line, the whole idea here is to be conscientious, to understand where you are and to make the right decisions and to be involved and to live within this circle and and there's plenty of room there to play and have fun and enjoy life, but we have to know where you are.
So Bob, thank you very much. We really appreciate your messages. Just for our audience, Breathe California is well known for its work on air pollution control, and it may not surprise many of you, but air pollution control and climate change are virtually the same things. They're cutting down on burning things to get energy. So next week, we should have another show talking about this topic. There's a lot to be said. Thanks again, Bob.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for inviting me, Terry. It was a pleasure.
See you all next Monday.
Bye.